Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Today we're learning another design in our rail fence block. This is a little review. We're going to review some wiggly U shapes, which we had in block number 1, and we're also going to try the straight line and sharp angle version of this, which I call teeth. They just look kind of a boxy row teeth, I guess, is what it reminds me of. Anyway, let's get on the machine and see how this works and see the difference between these two designs. So here's my block. I've already stitched it in the ditch and it's ready to go. And we've got these longer wiggly U shapes, we've got longer sets of teeth, and then we've got some more narrow sets of both designs. And we're actually going to be stitching these back here freehand without any marking. But first I want to kind of go over some review of our wiggly U shapes here, and of course learn the new design teeth right here. So let's get started. I like to stitch wiggly U shapes from left to right. I think it just feels nice. It's a nice way to flow through the design. If you need to, you can also rotate and stitch this vertically. Here, let me show you what that would look like, kind of like this. You can stitch this vertically. It really just depends on what you like and what feels most natural to you. I also want to kind of pay attention to your visual, kind of how you're able to see the block. Some machines have kind of a bulky front to them, and it might be impeding your vision. You might want to lower or raise the chair height, but that will also affect which angle feels the most natural for you. I can kind of see really well to this front side of my machine, so I always kind of like this angle because I can really see where I'm going and how I'm stitching it. With wiggly U shapes, the one thing you want to be mindful of is that it's one of those designs that you can really get fast with your hands. So if my hands are moving fast but my machine doesn't speed up, you can see my stitches getting bigger. I need to also speed up my machine too, put my foot down so that the two speeds stay in balance. So you see how kind of my stitches got big here and a little out of control. That's simply speed, and you want to keep that ratio of your hands moving in the same time as your feet. And this is going to be something that comes with time and practice. It's not something that came to me overnight. I had a lot of big and tiny stitches when I first got started, and that's totally normal. Okay, so that's our wiggly U shapes. We got this nice long band of that design, and you know, this is a great thing to use in your sashing, in the space between blocks. If you've got a quilt with about a 2-inch sashing, this will be a perfect design to stitch in it. Okay, so now let's tackle these longer teeth. And basically this is just a straight line, sharp angled version of the same design. We're going to hit that corner, stitch straight down, hit that corner, stitch over. Now, I would not rotate this. I would stitch this all in one pass, so either from left to right or straight down. Let me rotate and I'll show you what I mean. Straight down like this. It's entirely up to you how you stitch it, but I would not rotate for every single little line. That would get pretty tedious pretty fast, and these lines are so short, you know, your machine shouldn't have a problem with this. I have had machines that are really finicky, but they could probably have done this even if they had to stitch for a little while in a direction they didn't like. I think that this is definitely doable. I want you to definitely compare, maybe even go back and rewind the video and check out the section where I was stitching this design. And I want you to listen to the difference between my machine stitching this versus this. Notice that I didn't stop at all, and I didn't really slow down much when I was stitching the wiggly U shapes. For these straight lines, I do a lot more slowing down. I stitch more carefully in those sections. I speed up in the middle of that line, but then I slow right back down again. You know, it's one of those things, it's a subtle thing, but that's speed control. And matching my hands to it, it did take, you know, practice in order to keep my stitches all the same length. As far as what length is the right length, there's really no right or wrong. I've never taken a ruler to my quilt, so I have no idea what my stitch length is, but I aim to have a nice, tiny, tight stitch. That's what I like to see on my quilt visually. I think it looks good. So that is our teeth and our wiggly U shapes, and you can see the difference between the two designs, and both of these would really look great in your sashing, just stitched as is. They're very, very simple, but they'll fill up that space and really make it pop. Okay, so we've got some spaces down here that I have left unmarked. And I want to show you what it's like to stitch this freehand. So I'm going to stitch up a bit. And especially what it's like to stitch this freehand if you're trying to do 2 rows and kind of keep them, you know, matchy-matchy, kind of identical above and below. Like if I'm trying to make sure that my wiggly U-shapes here is going to exactly match up with the wiggly U-shapes below it. How do you do that? Well, you're going to kind of be visually, you know, using this first line as a guide. And so I'm going to get started stitching, and as I come down, I'm going to be checking out where this dipped down. And I'm going to be kind of visually trying to line up these 2 rows together as I stitch them. Now, is this going to be perfect? No, because I'm freehand quilting it. So it's going to have a slightly different look. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's the point of freehand quilting, the saving time of not having to mark it, and also having your own kind of personal signature on it. But you can see how I'm really, what I'm keeping my eye on, I'm kind of looking at where I'm stitching into, but I'm also keeping my eyes a little bit on this too. I'm kind of keeping the 2 together at the same time and trying not to get too far off. But even if I do get far off, does it matter? No, it doesn't matter a bit. And this is one of those designs I think looks really nice when you stitch it in ripples like this. And you see I marked just a little bit here, just so that way I would be able to have a little guide to finish it off. So I'm going to meet up with that line and finish off that row of wiggly U-shapes. There we go. Okay, let's do the same thing for this row of teeth. Only this time, notice how these wiggly U-shapes were completely parallel. So this is kind of in a hill and this is a hill. Well, I'm doing this opposite, meaning that this side was close to the stitching line here. It's flipped. The opposite is close to the stitching line here. So this is going to be a little different, but because they're all straight lines, sharp angles, it should be very easy to kind of guesstimate space. So I'm going to get started on these lines, and then now I'm going to wing it. Totally wing it. I'm stitching over and down. When it's down like this, I can't really see, so I have to kind of guess. And one thing that's really nice is that I already know that this is a 1/2 of an inch. This is on a 1/2 of an inch scale. That means there's a 1/2 of an inch between this line and this line. And I can visually just kind of say, okay, that's roughly 1/2 an inch, time to go over, time to change direction, time to stitch back. And that's one of those things that paying attention to your quilting guide, doing some tracing, will certainly be a good idea for working this design. And I like the way this looks. I think it looks kind of like railroad tracks. If you had a little kid quilt with some sashing in it, you could quilt this design in there and it would look like railroad tracks. That would be really cute. So I'm just going to finish this up, carefully stitching, you know, straight line over, straight line back, straight line over. That's all it is. It's very simple. But trying to match up with the row before it, so that way it all stays nice and even. And that should finish it up. So this is what my rail fence block looked like when I finished quilting it with wiggles and teeth. So I want you to understand that you can quilt this completely freehand. You could quilt it with one marked line and then try and use that marked line as a guide for your next line. There's lots of different things that you can play with here, and I think these designs would be great for the sashing of any quilt. You don't have to go super complicated with your quilting design. Sometimes just a wiggly line is going to fill in that area and just make it look funky and fun. So I hope this has inspired you. If you've got some quilts on the shelf, you know, we've been stitching through all of these blocks and you've got lots of practice under your belt already. Maybe consider basting up one of your quilts and get started quilting them on your own. Just have that as extra practice between these blocks, and I think that you're going to see such a difference for your quilting ability as you go. So my name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Find your copy of the Building Blocks quilt pattern at leahday.com and join us as we learn how to piece and free motion quilt together. Until next time, let's go quilt.